Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's Underscore. My name is Shannon Howard. I'm the Director of Customer and Content Marketing at Intellum, and I'm excited to be here today just hosting our panel conversation. We're going to be talking about 2026 trends in learning and development. You're very obviously going to hear about AI, so if you're eager to learn more, we've got some great guests today who are going to talk us through not just like AI theoretically, but how is this actually changing our day-to-day work. Before we dive in, just some quick housekeeping. First of all, this webinar is being recorded, so if you want to come back, you want to share it with a colleague, it will be recorded and sent to you after the webinar is over. There's also a Q&A box at the bottom of our screens. So as you have questions as we're talking, please use that Q&A box. The chat is also open, so if you want to say hello, introduce yourself to our panelists, let us know where you're calling in from. We'd love to hear from you. And then also, if you need closed captions, you can find those at the bottom of the screen and turn those on. I'll also just make a quick plug at the end of the webinar. You'll get an automatic Zoom will kind of pop up in your browser window and just ask you a few questions to give us some feedback. That's really helpful for us to understand what did you like, what did you not like, who do you want to hear from, what do you want to learn about. These webinars are built for you, tailored for you, and we take all that feedback into consideration. So we appreciate you guys sharing your thoughts and feedback. And then now I'm going to turn it over and allow our panelists to introduce ourselves. John, I'm going to start with you, and then Angela, you'll go up next.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. Welcome, everybody. I'm John Lay. I'm the CEO, lead analyst, and founder of Talented Learning, which is a global independent research firm that studies the learning technology market. So I spend my days reviewing all the new learning technology that evolves and is innovated at any given day, any given year around the world. And as our day job, we help learning system buyers buy the right systems. So we're LMS selection consultants. And so we help organizations go through a formal buying process of everything from developing your goals and business plan to signing contracts and everything in between. So thrilled to be here and share some of the research and things that we've learned this year.
And Angela?
Hi, thanks for having me, Shannon. I'm Angela Masella. I'm the VP of Workforce Experience Consulting for EPAM. EPAM is a digital transformation firm, and within my practice, we have a learning services group. And so we consult and also help organizations across the world build programs, launch programs, select the right technology, and probably most relevant to this call, we're helping our clients really transform with AI, both the back office and how you can optimize, reduce costs and so forth with AI in your operations, but then also creating more effective learning programs with AI that are driving better learning experiences.
Awesome. And Rob?
Hello, everyone. I'm Rob Gray. I work as an enterprise account manager at Intellum, and I just look after two very large accounts. Between them, there's over 5 million learners. And before that, I was actually at Google for 13 years, and as a part of that role, I led teams for knowledge and learning management across both internal and external learners. So I come with a practitioner background and mindset, and of course, uh, I'm in touch with what all our biggest customers are very interested in talking about right now and into 2026.
Amazing. I'm going
Is
to
that
stop.
it, Rob? Only 5 million users?
Only 5 million, maybe 5.2 today. I don't know.
Small potatoes. No, but I'm glad you guys are all here. This is a great panel. Y'all, you probably heard the different backgrounds. And so today we're going to talk about, right, 2026 learning and development trends. We're going to touch on AI and you're going to hear about it from these different perspectives, which I think is I really enjoyed our prep call and conversation. So we're going to start kind of at the top. Maybe this is a big question, but I think it'll inform the rest of our conversation. And Angela, I'll start with you. When you think about how AI is transforming learning ecosystems, like what's top of mind for you? What are you seeing with your customers?
Yeah, so really the one of the biggest shifts in AI, other than skill sets and learning AI as a discipline, is really the infrastructure behind it. And it requires the um, cohesive alignment of data across an entire organization. And that's a bit different from any of the transformations that we've seen in learning before. There's a lot of silos that we're looking at breaking between learning organizations, HR, business. And when all of that data is brought together, what you see is really a transformation of what we call the learning ecosystem. So we're all very familiar with the learning management systems, sometimes learning content management systems, and then our AI development, or sorry, our e-learning development tools. But now we're looking at broader ecosystems that include platforms like content management systems, like data warehouses, and we're bringing those together in a way in a learning world that we haven't seen before. It's really powerful because what we're able to see is taking enterprise-wide content. For example, if you're talking about a product development organization, you can take product definitions, put them in one database, and then be able to pull from that and put the definitions into e-learning. And then with approaches and technology that support things like what we call single source authoring, you can make one change in that database and it can then publish content through your learning ecosystem. It's really seeing amazing results and being able to keep learning up to date, relevant, real time, in the flow of work. All of those things that we've been talking about for so long are actually coming to fruition. And then, these ecosystems are really what's able to power things like chatbots in the real world of learning.
I love that realization, because I know this came up a lot, is when we were talking about what we're going to talk about, that maybe for 10, 20 plus years, we've been talking about certain things. And now in this age of AI, we're actually able to realize some of those things that maybe, we've talked about, like right content, right person, right time. We've kind of incrementally gotten toward that. AI is kind of creating an opportunity there. Rob, I think you wanted to talk about how AI is transforming content creation.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, one of the really interesting things for me, like there's no shortage of people talking about AI. Everyone's talking about it. And then when I see how people are practically using it already today, it's very much in this, what I would call these assistive technologies. And this is basically someone's using Gemini or ChatGPT or whatever to do things like you could take like 100-page PDF and literally in 15 seconds, you could tell it, hey, create me a one-pager on this topic. And it will create a really good, high quality one-pager in 15 seconds. That's probably better than what a professional would have done it for me and my team just 3 years ago. And things like that, just sort of assisting people creating technology, creating content using these technologies in an assistive way, even things like video creation. So using tools like Synthesia or HeyGen, there's a bunch of tools like that out there, Google Vids. Taking like, let's say you want to create a professional introduction for your course. When I was running a team, yeah, I would have had 5 people involved in this process to create a video. It would have taken me at least 3 weeks. I would have had to find a videographer, find a spokesperson, shot the video, done all the post-production and editing. I probably would have been mostly happy with it, but maybe want some changes. That's like weeks and weeks of work. Now I can do the same thing in literally less than 30 minutes. I can get high-level production value, professional video done with a script written, everything, and into my LMS in less than a day. And to me, that's incredible. This is what's happening today. And then with things like we have these creator agents in Intellum now, and I'm seeing people producing much higher quality. So much higher quality than they would before. What I see a lot of customers doing in practice, someone tells them to throw a course together. All they do is they'll go into the LMS, stick a PowerPoint with like maybe an amateur video in there. That's it. So very, very amateurish type of content. And now they can do the same thing in half the time, but they got a whole course with professional, sort of academically rigorous learning objectives, course outline, content, everything in a fraction of the time. And so I see time savings. The biggest benefit there is not just you saving time, because you still got all these people I'm seeing these learning teams focusing their efforts from a reactive content creation, order taking type of workflow to having the time now to spend on strategic work with the business. Is the learning program actually providing strategic value? Is there a business outcome that we're working towards? Because to be honest, before they were able to do this, they would always say they producing stuff that creates business value, but in practice, they were just creating a bunch of content. They really didn't have a good idea of whether it was effective or not.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing the most gains, and probably I've read a ton of, AI in state of AI reports, and content creation is hands down top use case today. And I really think we're probably just scratching the surface of possibility, but content creation is really that opportunity for huge gains because we've all done that, I've done the studio, you've got hair and makeup and the crew filming and the post-production takes so long. And now you can do that in a fraction of the time. And to your point, like you don't have to get someone back out into the studio. You could just update a script and then your AI avatar is like doing its thing.
And for international customers or customers with international employees and audiences, that like the translation and doing multilingual videos is something that we often never did before because it was just too expensive or difficult to actually get that done. Now it's a possibility. You could produce your English video and then by the end of the week, you could have that same video in 17 different languages with perfect dialect and that type of thing just opens up new opportunities. So it's not only about doing the same thing faster than before, you can do many more different types of things that helps you reach your audience in a much more relevant and personal way.
Yeah, if people have not seen Hey Jen, they have a commercial where his voice changes like languages and it's pretty wild. It's pretty awesome. And we are not sponsored, but it's just like a really cool technology. John, talk to us about the learner experience. I know that's top of mind for a lot of the customers that you're working with in the LMS like vetting process.
I have so much I want to pile on both. It wasn't too long ago that it was like $40,000 to get an additional language localization, custom localization in an LMS interface. And now, as Rob's saying, this stuff is in seconds, and you can do it in 38 languages. It's just amazing how some of the tasks that we used to stress on are no longer stressable, including content development and accelerating the process as everything was Rob was saying, but also with the ecosystem, as Angela was saying. One of the cool things. So I get to travel around. I'm looking at new systems, new technologies all the time. One of the cool things that I'm seeing is that ecosystem changing to include sales and customer support, and then to bring that with learning, and so that the database and the AI is pulling off these, and even during a sales call, helping you ask the next question, listening and digging into the database and combining that real life on the spot learning with AI in different ecosystems to really take that learning to where you are in your daily job, but in a way that's measurable. So that's pretty cool. But one of the things I learned this year in my tour of over a couple hundred learning systems is that AI is in every part of it, including and primarily in the learner experience. So things like content recommendations. So in the olden days, the administrator would say, you want this one? You're hardwire this next course to say, okay, serve up this next course if they finish this course. Now AI is used in everything from your preferences to your media to your job role to how long you're on the particular job to who your boss is, what country is, what your peers are doing, and all those things are pulling all that data together to give you the next piece of content, whether that's a video or whether that's a course or whether that's a program. And so just helping you on your organize it and surface learning based on your needs and wants is all being driven or can be driven by AI now. But even more importantly, or more innovative, is this concept of these agents now. And agents are basically chatbots, for lack of a better word, that could be tied to courses. They could be tied to groups. They could just be tied to a person. But for a learner, some examples of what you see is you have a course a regular SCORM course, and then on the side is the chatbot that's allowing you to ask more information, dig in deeper to different things, help ask you questions, and then make it adaptive of what you're seeing on the screen. All these things are happening in real time at the course level, or you could just be in your daily job and say, how do you do this real quick, and then have that go to your private LLM of information and bring back just in the point of time the information that you need in a much more strategic way than you've ever been able to do. And then finally, the last part of this learning experience I think is really cool is that after you finish a course or a program, the LMS more or less knows your strengths or weaknesses. It says, okay, you passed, but you still have this 20% gap on this thing. How about I feed you a little custom personalized micro lessons each day until we get that up to 100, perhaps. And for things like sales and sales performance and customer support, the difference between 80% and 100% in your real life performance is pretty big. So it's just like this adaptive, personalized learning going to the next level. And that's just all being driven today, where with AI, where just 3 years ago, if you wanted to do any of this, you had to hardwire it. And so it's just amazing how things have changed.
I see Katie had a question, but just on that, I think we had this evolution, and we've been talking about kind of this move over time of there was manual, like you might enroll someone in a course, and then automation could maybe recommend a related course, or once you've done this or based on this criteria. But now we're getting to this hyper personalized learning using AI, which is just a really neat opportunity that wasn't available, right? Like there's just no way that humans or even automation can do this at that kind of scale. Um, Katie, I'm going to pull in your question, but John, I want to double click. You were talking about on kind of like this idea of learning in the flow of work. So you mentioned specifically like a sales rep is on a call and there's kind of this support in the moment of need. And Angela, I know you were talking during our prep call about how AI is changing this, just in time learning in the flow of work. What changes are we seeing there? Because this really is, how a lot of us are learning on the job. We don't necessarily go to live training like we used to. We don't have like full days like maybe we did, but we're really learning in real time. And so how are we seeing that change in this kind of AI era?
I can give you a practical example of how that just expand that sales example a little bit. So in previous times, 2023, you release a new product, you'd have to go take a course for your salespeople, for example, to learn about the new products, the service, the benefits, the challenge, how to position it, overcome an objections. You would learn that formally, and then you'd go out into the wild and get creamed or not, depending on whether you can remember all that stuff, in front of a client in the meeting. And so now what I'm seeing in different levels of sophistication with this is that, okay, hey, I've got a call with ABC company tomorrow, and so I want to practice. And this was their inbound email asking about this. And then so it says, oh, okay, well, we need to create an account plan. Here's an overview of the company. Here is what they sell. Oh, they're talking about this product line. Well, they do this. And so they give you all the information. Here are the questions that you need to ask to close that gap. And so it's like helps you prepare this whole plan before you ever get on this call. Things that used to take hours to do by looking at reports and 10K reports and websites, pulls it all there right in front of you. Then when you're on the call, it's listening, and you turn on that, and it's helping you all the way through that on things that what they're saying, what the next question to ask, what you didn't cover yet, how you could propose this, how you can pull information out and share information on the call. And so it's like you got a whole sales team just in your back pocket walking you through this whole process. And before you had to do that all yourself. And so now it's like the power of 10, 10 times to one, and you're getting it in that real flow of work. And so is it a crutch? Yeah. But is it a good crutch? Yeah, I think.
Well, and I think to add on to that, in fields where information is changing so quickly, technology, products, even like I think you can even look at economies and marketing and pretty much every industry where content is updating so quickly. In the past, we've had challenges in updating our learning and then more importantly, getting our people back in front of that learning again, because there's been a gap between their when they can use the learning, take the learning, it takes them away outside of the work that they're doing. But now with AI, and chatbots, as John was describing, all of that new information can flow instantly, right? You update the content, and now your service providers, your marketers, your sales folks, your educators, they all have the most up-to-date information immediately. We're also seeing a huge impact in what we call human skills development, both from an experience design, but also from a preparation standpoint. So, as everyone I'm sure is aware on this call, full of learning folks, human skills are some of the hardest to upskill people in. They usually take a lot of time. And we all know that practice is the most important driver of changing those human skills. By human skills, I'm meaning communication, critical thinking, leadership, management. Um, and what we're really seeing is an incredible ability to give people a foundational level of knowledge in these skills, but practice on the job in real time. So our teams have built what we call management coaches, which are essentially AI bots that lead a manager through a coaching call with their teams, and it can pull from the project feedback that the employee has gotten, their development goals, what learning have they put towards those development goals. They can bring all of that to the table in real time as the manager is coaching through with their teams. And that saves that manager an incredible amount of time and research and preparation that they would need to do ahead of those calls. So it's really cool. And we're just seeing the leverage of this in so many different industries.
Wow, neat, neat. That goes to sales calls too. So say extend that out. You're practicing on that new product, and the concept of like role playing with your boss. That's something like super important for you said to practice these skills. But you just couldn't do it. So say you manage 10 or 20 different salespeople. Do you really going to review their different videos and allow them to say, oh, no, that one's not great. Why don't you do it again? No, why don't you do it again? None of that happens. And now you can just say, okay, practice until you get it perfect. And the AI simulator on the other side, whether that's a cartoon or even a human, will just practice with you, practice with you, practice with you until you don't need to practice anymore. And the same thing goes with like learning a language. They have the same type of simulations to just practice that same scenario over and over again because an AI bot can't get tired generally.
John, we had this funny situation where we had to do sales enablement for 20,000 salespeople, and we wanted to do this. This was in the days before we had AI simulation, so we wanted them to do a role play. But how do you do that at scale with 20,000 people? And the only way we could do it back then was to have uh, we'd do it by fear. So we would tell them this: we're going to have this meeting, and the CEO is coming to the meeting. You're going to pitch to our CEO your sales pitch. So everyone, all 20,000 would prepare because just in case they were the one. And then we would do it with maybe three people. So only three people would get called up.
Yeah, brilliant.
But everyone would prepare because they knew they didn't want to be the one that arrived unprepared. Like there's no way to measure that. How well did these people prepare? You could guess that, but you didn't know how good each one of them actually were. It was just impossible to do. And now with AI role plays, very measurable and measuring things we wouldn't even have thought of measuring before.
I
And
bet
that
AI couldn't come up with that strategy, Rob.
Yeah.
and that measurement is getting us to a point where we can really get to that business value that was talked about earlier, right? We finally have these metrics we've been talking about for years and years that help us, I guess, rise to the business expectations of being able to prove the value of learning programs.
hmm And so by that, Angela, you mean the merging of like business and sales and customer support data with learning data is that what you're driving at?
Yes, and we can actually show metrics around the responses people are given, this learning took them from this response to this response in 30 minutes, right? There's actual measurement there in the analytics that from these AI applications.
Cool.
I love it. Um, Before we move on, I want to pull in some questions that came in. So, this is a good one because I think, oh, Pam had asked. I'm losing questions in the chat. If we can put questions in the Q&A box, this will keep me from losing questions in the chat. Do you think there will still be the need for live training that takes people away from work? So we've talked about kind of AI serving as performance support or being able to use kind of this virtual tutor type concept. Is there still like, do we see a future, and maybe this isn't trend so much as like we're rubbing our crystal ball here and saying like, what is the role of live training in this AI future?
Rob?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll answer with what I think and then what I'm seeing in practice. I think there's absolutely the case where to get the desired outcome, technology can do all or most of it. In practice, I'm seeing a trend of our customers doing more live training, and I don't know if it's because people have digital fatigue and they tired of interacting with technology, or they feel the value of actually having that human connection. But many of them are actually doing a lot of instructor-led training, using technology to better prepare for that and create better supporting content, but still doing that live training. So that's what I see right now. Whether that's still, so I think to answer the question, I don't think there's the need, but I think there is the desire.
Mhm. I guess a good way to put it. I see a similar trend. I don't see ILT or VILT slowing down. If anything, it's accelerating in a lot of clients because you can, in a lot of ways, you can do things faster. Still with putting together a quick PowerPoint and delivering that. Though that's arguable now with AI. But I think fatigue is probably a good way around it. There's a lot of audience groups that just don't want to sit around their laptop to learn something. It's a lot easier to bring them in a room. And so, will that hold for 10 years or 5 years? I think so. We're humans, but it'll probably shift a little bit electronic, would be my guess.
And I think in high stakes fields, medicine, but there's definitely fields where I think you still need that human connection. You still need that human assessment because there are things, that technology can't assess, or if they do and it's incorrect. Because I think we've all realized the value of still having QA and not solely relying on AI for all of our content production without QA. And so still, if there's that gap in technology, I think in high stakes fields, it's going to be really important to keep that human connection.
Um, mm, yeah, I want to talk about Katie, I'm going to come back to your question because I think this is a good segue into like the challenges of AI, right? It's like it can do so many things for us, right? Like we can realize things that for years were really nice sounding, or we made kind of small incremental improvements toward, right, being able to serve up the right content, right time, right person. Or even, assessing skills, right? Those AI role plays are really cool. We work with Udly and you can talk to this, AI thing that's having this real conversation with you and then giving feedback. Like, did you hit on these points? Did you summarize the prospect's pain points accurately, right? Like just things that you would have had to have someone like personally do that. So there's a lot of cool opportunities, but I think there's also a lot of challenges too. And so like Eric had one just about like what is basically, I think, the role of if AI is doing a lot of the creation, what is the role of maybe the instructional designer? But then also in terms of how do we implement and adopt these within our organization? So I'll open the floor for whoever wants to start here because I know there's actually we covered a lot in our prep call around like what we're seeing just in terms of there's this reality, but we're not quite there. There are some obstacles to getting there.
Yeah, so I think for us, we work across organizations and we help, my team in particular, helps learning organizations really integrate with the rest of business and to optimize the learning business, which then helps facilitate the wider company goals. And what we are really seeing is that learning teams are really not used to having to work so closely with IT organizations. And so we hear a lot about AI and we want AI and we want to use it tomorrow, but our teams and our organizations aren't necessarily prepared because the whole AI transformation is just a massive, drastic shift in governance, operations, data, information that we really haven't seen in, many decades. And so I think we're going through this existential shift, but it makes, I think, what many learning professionals are really good at, speaking across businesses, speaking across technical teams, subject matter experts, translating that communication through the organization, I think we're really good at, but we're just not used to doing it when it comes to technology and to our business and what we need to get from the organization. And so, like, for example, I had a client come to us and she leads a learning and technical writing organization. And she was like, how are you optimizing operations? And so we showed her all these cool demos. And she's like, that's great. I want that tomorrow. What are the next steps? We said, well, the next steps are speaking to your organizations that are integrating AI. We need to speak to your IT organization. And she kind of groans and she's like, okay, never mind. She's like, it took us, 5 years to get a CMS. And she's like, I can't even, think about getting through that. And so I think that's a real people challenge that we're seeing. And I think as learning organizations, understanding that we're going to need to take on that challenge and figure out how to ask for what we need and work through the process is one aspect of it. But then helping our organizations to really break down those silos with more communication, with more, it's a bunch of different things, but it's really changing behaviors throughout the organization to make it successful to even be able to operate with AI.
Breaking down these silos is important. In a lot of ways, it's like pushing a rock uphill, though, from an L&D and training standpoint, because we're trying to break through AI doors or silo doors where AI is impacting them in relation to the training, but in relation to every silo in what they're doing in their daily life. And so organizations, I think right now it's like a chicken and the egg. It's okay, we got all this great learning technology, AI, but it can't really be adopted it because at the macro level, they haven't figured out what they want to do or allow yet throughout the organization. And so, and the reason is because there's a lot of downsides. There's incredible legal risk in terms of data privacy and sharing data. Or what if AI creates a course and somebody gets dead because of it because they teach them the wrong way, and there's legal exposure that way. And so, a lot of organizations are still taken a very cautious route. And so that flows downstream to, all our stakeholders and what we try to do. And so that makes just the challenge and that disconnect tough. In a real life story, I have a global financial organization. We had a conversation, a whole cross-functional conversation, very similar to this conversation today about all the things that we've been seeing in AI as we're developing requirements, and everybody's gooing and gone about this and that and how cool it is. And I say, okay, great. So how are we let's start working these into the requirements. And they said, no, no, no. We don't want to work these into requirements because we don't have approval yet. That'll take years. We'll never get this system approved. And so even though they see it coming as an organization, they're like, we got to step back and maybe we can grow into that, but that can't be what we're making our decision on. So my takeaway from all that is that there's so much potential, but at the same time, there's a latency into that potential because the impact is so much broader than our impact as training and learning professionals.
Yeah, I see similar things, especially in the very large organizations. You have, quite rightly so, you have these security approval processes you have to go through, and I would say if you work in a big organization, there's that's the risk is that your competitor could be advancing more quickly because they may not have to do all that stuff. But if you still want to do it, I think it's worthwhile experimenting. This is the time where to learn these AI tools, you have to use them. Like you can't, like doing a course on an AI tool, you're not going to learn half of it as well as if you actually just using these tools. And by using these tools, you're going to then understand how it could be of benefit to your organization. So what I see a lot of these big organizations doing is they set up these sort of small innovation pods where they're testing these tools out in a safe environment, not necessarily getting them in front of customers, but proving the workflow and proving the value that it could provide to the business before they actually start this rigorous and from what Angela said, often results in a desponding response when someone realizes they have to go through a security review. They just don't do it. So they just give up. And with a lot of these innovative technologies, they end up never getting adopted because no one wants the pain of working with a security audit team or anything like that. But if you can show what value it is going to be to the business, then you get a lot more people on your side to help push those things through. And then on the other hand, in line with that, you can also work with these IT teams to help improve and streamline those approval processes because they do have to think about all the things that John was talking about. And you just don't have the luxury of 6 months waiting for that to happen these days. You got to figure out a way to make that business operate at a faster speed. And in the greater industry, if you work for a very small organization, this is where you potentially have a competitive advantage because you can get things done
I
in a
agree.
fraction of the time of your much larger competitors. And we see that now that you have these large organizations feeling under threat from much smaller companies just because they can, the barrier for them is much less.
And
Mm.
there's several of these analyst, publications that are coming out talking about like 90% of the AI projects being rolled out are failing. And I see that as a huge opportunity for our industry because that's a place where we can go in and help really make that change more successful. Figure out why is that happening and then help bridge that gap. And so I think, there is a challenge with AI success, period, at an organization. But I think it's really the people with our skill sets and our backgrounds that are going to help organizations be successful with these
Mm.
problems going forward.
I agree. And somebody in the chat asked a question, is the instructional designer going away, because of all this? And I don't think so. I just think it becomes more strategic. So I think perhaps lower level, will be more automated, but still to be able to do what Angela was just saying and help assess and come up with solutions and what the gap, that's always still going to be a need inside of organizations. And that's the need our profession solves.
I was really hoping that question would come up because it's something that we hadn't posed it in that way, but over the last year, our teams have been more and more involved with enterprise-wide AI implementations, mostly because the teams that are related to performance content sit within my organization. So they were brought in basically as content strategists for AI. But what we were finding was there was just a whole role that was missing. The role around all of the content going into the back end of the data to AI bots, it wasn't effective because it wasn't written, parsed, structured, tagged in a way we needed it to come out of the agent to actually change behavior. And so what we found was this was absolutely the next evolution of the skill set for instructional designers. Because instructional designers know how to structure information to help people perform. Now we need to structure the content to help AI help people perform. And so we've actually come up with what, I think everybody hears about all the new roles that we don't know will exist tomorrow. We're so excited because we feel like we have landed on one of those roles. And now our organization is really leaning in towards upskilling our instructional designers to understand all the different technologies and the databases and so forth. And our instructional designers, in turn, are very excited that they're getting to learn new skills, but more importantly, really show the next level of their value and their skill set in these kind of integrated teams. And what we're calling that role is AI content and enablement architect or consultant. Like you can put whatever word at the end you want, but it's really, I think, going to be a very cool role to fill. And I'm also very excited to see what all new roles we're going to create tomorrow and next month and 6 months from now, too.
When I got my master's in instructional technology almost 30 years ago, one of the things that struck me in one of the first classes, he's like, everything that we're teaching you here today will be obsolete, except what we're teaching you about learning. And so you'll have to adapt to the new tools time and time and time and time again throughout your career. But learning and learning best practices and being effective in learning will never go out of style. And I think AI is just the next tool we got to learn as part of our profession, except it's a big one.
Yeah, I see it also helping reduce the frustration of instructional designers. And I agree with both Angela and John. Is, IDs are not going away. I used to have in the teams that I managed, I would have my instructional designers really frustrated by things like defining learning objectives with their stakeholders. They've been meeting after meeting, and it's been weeks now. We can't agree on the learning objectives, and eventually they may even just leave them off out of frustration. And now with AI, you can, for example, using our creator agent in Intellum, you can create sort of academically rigorous learning objectives in a few minutes that just ends the debate once and for all. And the instructional designer doesn't even have to have the debate with a stakeholder and get frustrated by this lack of progress. It's just done for you. And even things like getting a base course outline out to a stakeholder to review, done in a few minutes. And I think AI is really helping with instructional design is reducing that frustration, spending their time on that, and then working on the things they enjoy as well as the strategic things.
Mm. I think that is an area where AI can get better. So I still in a lot of the courses that I review that are AI driven, I think the ID part is still lacking. So I think there still needs to be a better, I don't know, training of the best instructional practices depending on what you're trying to achieve. That part I still haven't seen a whole too much innovation yet. I think there's still room to grow there.
100%.
Okay, there's so many good questions. I want to go back to Katie's question from earlier, and this is around the learning ecosystem. So, Angela, kind of toward the top of the hour, we're talking about learning ecosystem, and Katie's question is like, is this an all-in-one future, or are these different systems and technologies? Okay, so it looks we're getting the nod, different
Yeah.
systems and technologies. And so how do we go about getting them all to work together? I know you mentioned IT. I feel like that's critical not just for AI, but just for like a holistic, integrated ecosystem in general.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about ecosystem, I'm talking about platforms, applications, um, systems. They can be mobile, cloud, on-prem. They're really integrated platforms for the needs that you have specifically within your organization. So we have not seen even so EPAM is historically a software engineering company. So we became 60,000 people organization building the infrastructures for the software, Google, Apple, Facebook, all the big ones. But even our custom platforms can't do all. And so what we really believe in is picking the best platform and technologies for the needs you have, and then building a integration through APIs or native integrations as you need them. But then really building, having some sort of central portal, so it doesn't become a whole bunch of different applications that people have to get to, and the user experience can be very cohesive and flowing, and kind of what the user sees is a one-stop shop. But the technology that is running everything you need is in the background and it's integrated. And what we believe in is rather than looking at learning tech, we're really looking at enterprise. So you're looking at what are the integrations between the HR, performance management, leadership development, those types of platforms that you're tracking and reporting and creating development goals and so forth, and then connecting that with the learning technology that creates the content, manages the content, publishes the content, tracks the content. We're all very familiar with learning management systems, and a lot of them can do much of that. But as we're looking across the organization and really, I have a focus on content and sharing content through an enterprise because we work with so many product organizations, and they'll have marketing siloed from support, siloed from training. And generally, you're creating potentially the same course 3 different times. You might have to have 3 different development teams, and it takes, 10 times longer to publish all of that over again. What we really want to get to is a central place where you can update that content and send it throughout your ecosystem. And then what that allows us to do is really put learning in the flow of work, because you can look at learning through a help center or through formal learning or informal learning through chatbots.
John has an enthusiastic nod.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Pam had a question here. Who is responsible to coordinate the LMS instance and just-in-time AI bots? Are they always part of the LMS? Does the AI make the implementation of a holistic learning and development function much more complicated?
Yes and yes. I think. So yeah, I think from a learning standpoint, it's going to be, if I understand the question right, it will be our responsibility, or the owners of the learning technology or the learning team, or a program team. One of those would be responsible for the bots. And I think for a lot of the reasons that we talked about today, AI will make things easier, but it makes things harder at the same time. So it'll make it more difficult to get your approvals and to get IT to sign off and to break through some of those barriers. Will be some additional hurdles along the way that you'll have to navigate and deal with. But like all hurdles, if you can get to the other side, the upside of getting through those hurdles, it makes it worth the pain. So kind of like a half answer. It'll be a little bit tougher, but you'll get more out of it.
Some of the most successful organizations we work for look at each of their functions as a product. So, for example, thinking about learning as a product for your organization. And then if you think about that in a product mindset, you generally have the business owner, which would be someone from learning, and you have the product owner, which is someone from IT. And they really walk in lockstep, both to align what the business need is for the learning, but then the technology that supports it. And when you can see that kind of partnership, and they're really in lockstep in strategy decisions and in KPIs, we've found that that's very successful, because it provides both the functional knowledge that's needed to make AI successful, the content, what is in that content, which I keep coming back to over and over and over again, because some of the reasons AI projects fail is because the content can't help people perform, right? And then there's no point to having the AI tool. So when you have the business as one subject matter expert, and you have the IT and technology as the other subject matter expert, and they really are partners, we see definite success, much more optimized organizations, lower costs, and definitely more success in AI projects.
Would it be safe to say that then is kind of the role of the instructional designer, is ensuring that content is created to help people learn, right? Because there's like content, and then there's content that drives behavior change, learning content.
Correct. Yes. And that's the difference when you look across enterprise content. Like, so content for marketing is a different strategy for human behavior, right? The strategy is to cause people to buy something. Learning content, and the role of an instructional designer is to design, build, and develop that content to get a person to do a specific behavior, right? And so I think Definitely. I think the role of the instructional designer is to look at the content going into a bot and figure out, is that going to come out on the other side and actually be helpful to a person to do their job, allow them to skip steps 1 through 10 so that they can get to the strategy or the human skills that are so important in building relationships and all of those other more important things for the business than the actual tactics or steps in the process. And so that's how we're seeing our instructional designers evolve. They're really sitting as key parts of AI projects. The flip side of that is all of these AI products need to be tested in a whole bunch of different scenarios. And that's really where instructional designers can also come in and help build those test cases. And I think that there should be a lot of human observation in whether the tool is working or not. And so that is also a role that instructional designers can play because we're all used to doing that in our world, whether the outcome is an AI tool or a facilitated learning or an e-learning.
Eric said this was super helpful, and in thinking about like, I think maybe there was a narrative at one point that AI is going to take all of our jobs. And if you've gotten like a crazy chat GPT response to a question that you asked, you realize probably not today, maybe not tomorrow either. Like there's still a role, right? And in terms of how do we interact, but it is more of that thinking, like if this is a tool or technology that assists our work, like any other tool or technology that we've adopted in the past, how do we now learn and incorporate this into our workflow? And instead of worrying that it'll replace us, becoming like, how can this assist me in my work? We're coming close to time here. Looking ahead to 2026, anything else like we should be thinking about, mindful of, like while we've got people here kind of wondering like what does the future hold for us? What do we need? Is there anything that we haven't covered today that you think like we really need to be thinking about in the new year?
I mean, I'll start off, Shannon, by saying whatever we predict is going to happen is probably not going to happen. So it's that's what I've learned in the last year or so is just what I was convinced that things would go in a certain direction, and everything with the rate of AI adoption and everything new coming out, it's always continues to surprise me. So that's my
Yeah, we
take.
don't know. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. And we certainly agree. Agree. We can't predict the future. But something I always look at for this is this: we got to go back to lifelong learning in this. And if you spend 10 minutes a day, every day this year, you'll put 50 hours in, 10 minutes a day learning about something new in AI. That's 50 hours, worth of self-improvement you can have at the end of the year. So we don't know what's coming, but the only way you can prepare yourself is to prepare yourself and just carve a little bit every day, and it adds up quickly.
And I think to follow on to that message, there is a lot of you can either decide to be fearful about it, or you can decide that because we don't know is an opportunity for you to create what the future is, right? Like you do that through experimentation. I mean, the things that we've learned in this year, there was no one there to teach us. We just had to jump in and do projects and figure it out and speak with our clients and say, hey, we don't have all of the answers, but we're willing to figure it out with you. And I think whether you're working as a team of 2 or a team of 20, or you're an internal facing or you're client facing, I think getting your hands dirty, going in saying, I don't have the answers, but we'll figure out something. And that something will either work and we will have learned from it and we can build onto it, or it won't. And then we will learn from it, not do it again, change our approach and move forward. Because like I'm really inspired, and I think for a learning community, it's inspirational to know that the jobs of 3, 5, 10 years from now don't exist. We get to position those, we get to learn about those, and then we get to help build that future pipeline of talent who are going to do those jobs. And so that's how I try to frame the uncertainty and, quite frankly, what can be very scary with my team, but also with my clients, because we are definitely seeing the resistance that comes with change. but we have to somehow figure out how to create an inspirational message that gets our teams and our clients past that. And so I think it can be very exciting and a great opportunity. And we just need to keep striving for like what's going to be the benefit of this and the exciting part of all of this.
I
Now it's
do
time
really
for
love that point of view, Angela. It feels like nothing compared to now. It feels like nothing happened in L&D for 20 years, and suddenly everything's changing now. And I echo your point of view. It's exciting.
the figurative mic drop after Angela's wrap up.
Yeah, I like that. Ending on a hopeful note. The future is very exciting. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. Thank you, panelists, for joining. And I already saw a few things come in just about, yeah, this being a really helpful conversation. So really appreciate you all taking some time to share your insights, everybody, for joining us today. Please take a moment at the end just to provide some feedback, and let us know things that you want to hear about, or even if you want to double click on AI, what would be helpful for you there to learn more about. And we'll see you next month. All right.
Thank
Bye.
you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.